Okay, we're now back on the record. Ms. Pitts, would you swear in your witness and present your case? Well, you already swore your witness in, I'm sorry. Would you present your case? Oh, you're muted.
I'm fine to do it again, Your Honor.
No, it's
No?
fine.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Deputy Molina, you've been previously sworn. Can you please state your name and your agency?
Deputy Molina with the Fayette County Sheriff's Office. At the time of this incident, I was Officer Molina with the Riverdale Police Department.
Okay. And how long were you with Riverdale Police Department?
Over 2.5 years.
And how long have you been with the Fayette County Police Department? Deputies?
Less than a month.
Okay. Are you post-certified?
Yes.
Bringing your attention specifically to July 30th of 2022, were you working in your official capacity with the Riverdale Police Department?
Yes.
And what were your duties?
To patrol the streets of Riverdale and to enforce the laws of the state and the ordinances of the city.
Okay. Did you respond to 911 calls?
Yes.
On July 30th of 2022, did you have the occasion to respond to a 911 call at 6690 Church Street in Riverdale?
Yes.
And what's located at that location?
That is the exact address of the Riverdale Police Department.
Okay. So you got called outside, essentially.
No, I was in my patrol vehicle in the city on
Okay.
Church Street and Evans, and we were dispatched to that location.
Okay. And did you in fact respond to the Riverdale Police Department for a 911 call?
Yes.
Can you tell the court what was the nature of that call?
The first nature of the call was a disturbance. And then while en route to the incident location, it was upgraded to a kidnapping in progress.
Okay. And once you arrived there, can you tell the court what, if anything, did you observe?
Upon arrival, I observed the grandmother, Judy Wilson, pointing in the direction of northbound Church Street and at the intersection of Main Street. And I observed the gentleman later identified as Mr. Patterson, who was before us in the orange jumpsuit with a red in color suitcase running away northbound on Church Street from incident location. And I exited my patrol vehicle and I ordered him to stop, and he said, "No, for what?" He disobeyed my lawful order to stop. So I got back in my vehicle, drove closer to him, cut off his path of travel on foot. I exited my patrol vehicle and ordered him to stop again, and he finally then stopped.
Okay. And were there two individuals arrested that day in reference to this incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And one was, I believe you identified as Devontae Patterson.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the other one was that Jamie Littles.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you make a report in July of 2022 in reference to this incident?
Yes, I did.
And if your report indicates that Jamie Little was the one that said that you ordered to stop and said no for what, would that be more accurate? Would you
yes.
accurate that day or today?
That would be accurate.
Okay, so that apprehension referred to Jamie Little, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there also another officer that took Mr. Devontae Patterson into custody?
That was Officer Peterson of the Riverdale Police Department.
And can you tell us what was going on with Devontae Patterson at the time that you were executing this response to the 911?
He was in custody of the 3-year-old juvenile in question.
Okay.
And, well, not in custody, he had the possession of the 3-year-old juvenile in question. And he was running on foot from police presence, but was cornered and stopped at the Bank of America, which was across the street from the incident location.
Okay. And at some point, did you have an opportunity to speak with the caller, Miss Wilson, Judy Wilson? Is it Judy?
Yes.
Yes, Judy Wilson, in reference to what was going on?
I did.
And can you tell the court what Miss Wilson indicated to you?
She indicated that in 2021, the mother of the 3-year-old juvenile was killed in a drive-by shooting in Florida because apparently the family is gang affiliated. And the 3-year-old and the daughter at the time, who is now known as Reginae Patterson, was allowed custody to the grandmother verbally by the father. And so she took the daughter with her to reside with her in Georgia. Eventually, apparently, the two brothers came later on after that to live with the grandmother.
Mr. Little and Mr. Patterson.
Yes.
Okay. And so based on your investigation, the mother was killed in 2018, and then the grandmother had physical custody of the child until this date in 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And at the time, Mr. Patterson and Mr. Little, who I think you identified as the brothers of Reginae, the 3-year-old?
Yes.
Okay. Were attempting to take the child. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you learn from Ms. Wilson that Mr. Dwayne Patterson had
Objection, Judge, objection. She's leading. She's been doing it for a while, but I would object. She can ask straight questions rather than leading the witness.
I'm going to deny your objection. This is preliminary hearing. Hearsay is allowed in preliminary hearings. So if this is how the evidence has to come out, I'm going to allow it.
Deputy Molina, in your police report, did you advise that Ms. Wilson had indicated that Dwayne Patterson had in fact come to Georgia at some point?
Yes.
Can you please tell the court the circumstances of that?
Apparently, he came to her address in Fayetteville, Georgia, to retrieve the 3-year-old. She stated that he's having Social Security problems, and he believes that those problems will go away if he had possession of the daughter back with him in Florida. That cannot be proven, but apparently officers responded to that call that night. He claimed that she kidnapped the 3-year-old from him, and officers then made contact with her. She stated to them to call Riviera Beach Police Department in Florida, that there's an investigator there who was familiar with the case. And apparently the officers did contact Riviera Police Department, and Riviera Police Department told the officers do not allow the daughter back with the father because she will not be safe because he is gang affiliated and drug addicted.
And at that time, were any charges placed on Mr. Dwayne Patterson?
Objection. Mr. Patterson's not on trial, Judge. Dwayne Patterson's not.
Your Honor, I believe counsel in his proffer stated that Mr. Little and Mr. Patterson, Devontae Patterson, were working as agents of Mr. Dwayne Patterson. I think the fact that he was criminally trespassed is relevant to his agency with the two people he sent to retrieve his child.
I agree. I deny your objection. Go ahead.
Yes, I was told that Dwayne Patterson was then given a criminal trespass warning from the address of the grandmother, which was 110 Melanie, I believe, Circle in Fayetteville.
Okay. And that was directly related to him having a custody dispute with Miss Wilson. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so on July 30th of 2022, after you learned of the facts of this case, what, if anything, did you do as it pertains to Mr. Little and Mr. Devontae Patterson?
As it pertains to the two subjects, seeing that neither of them are the lawful guardian of the juvenile, it was not their business to take the juvenile with them back to Florida. It was the business of the father to conduct that. And so that's why I placed in interference with custody and kidnapping, because they took the child, they strong-armed the child from the grandmother in the parking lot of the Riverdale Police Department, and then ran across the street onto oncoming traffic. It's a very busy intersection, endangering the life and potential causing bodily harm to the child, which is why I also placed reckless conduct.
Okay. And did Miss Wilson tell you the facts and circumstances that led her to actually come to the Riverdale Police Department on that particular day?
Yes, she said she went shopping at Walmart with the 3-year-old daughter, and at Walmart when she came back out, she said that she saw the two gentlemen in getting in an Uber, and that the Uber was following her, and so she suspected that there was something happening, there was something going on. So she came, and she to be safe and to make sure that no harm would be caused, she parked in the Riverdale Police Department instead of going straight home to Fayetteville, Georgia, from after shopping for groceries. And in the parking lot, that's when she said the two gentlemen opened the doors to the van and pulled the child out of her arms.
Okay. And in the parking lot, is that where she dialed 911, which got you dispatched to her location?
Yes.
Okay. And that location, is that located within Fayette County?
That is located in Clayton County.
And I'm sorry. Is that located within Clayton County where we're having this hearing right now and everything?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further at this time, Judge.
Mr. Schoolcraft,
Your Honor, if Mr. Rogers would like to go first, he can go first.
Mr. Rogers.
I will. I don't mind. Deputy Molina.
Yes, sir.
I guess let's kind of start because there were a couple of statements made, and I just want to make sure, number one, that I heard them correctly.
Yes, sir.
Did you say at some point that Ms. Wilson claims that she was given custody by Mr. Patterson? Is that what you said?
Yes. It should be on body worn camera footage where she stated to me that Mr. Dwayne Patterson, after the death of the mother, Mr. Dwayne Patterson verbally gave the grandmother, Judy Wilson, the right to have custody of the granddaughter, to live with her in Georgia, where it would be more safe, apparently.
And
Okay.
Mr. Rogers, as I heard the testimony, that was in 2018, I believe, which I think is going to be a critical issue as we move forward with this. But go ahead, sir.
Deputy Molina, do you have any evidence that occurred?
Only testimony evidence written. If I recall, I don't have the witness statement form in which Judy Wilson completed and signed in front of me right now. But if I recall, she told me that verbally and may have written that in the witness statement form.
Okay. Have you seen any sort of acknowledgement of that from Mr. Patterson?
No, sir.
And just so we're clear, Ms. Wilson is the one establishing that Mr. Patterson is the father. Is that correct? In her version?
Yes, sir. That Dwayne Patterson is the father.
And for clarity, she's claiming that, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Is it your understanding that the mother of Reginae was killed in 2018? Is that what you said?
At the time, if I can recall correctly, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the grandmother told me 2018. But I was looking at the Fayette County Sheriff's Office report. It appears that the mother may have passed by the drive-by shooting in 2021. So I'm not sure the exact date.
When you say the Fayette report, what report are you referring to?
There's a Fayette, I believe a Fayette County Sheriff's Office report in which recently they went up to the grandmother's house for the same situation.
When we say recently, what are we talking about?
Let me, if you don't mind, let me look here at this date. It appears this was reported in August 16 of this year.
Okay. And just for clarification, this report that you're referring to, do you know what is that report cover?
The report covers, I believe, that Dwayne Patterson was at the Fayette County Sheriff's Office stating his case to a Sergeant Kent of the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, stating that he had the legal custody of the daughter. And so whether let's see, so that I believe there was a deputy sent to the grandmother's address, and I believe there is where the grandmother informed that deputy that the mother was killed by drive-by shooting on August 13 of 2021.
Okay. And what was the outcome of that report, as far as you said that Mr. Patterson went and
The outcome of that report was that that Mr. Patterson showed by paper that he was married to Crystal Wilson, which was the mother, and that he was and I believe he had the birth certificate, if I'm correct here, of the daughter. Yeah, he had the birth certificate of the 3-year-old girl, so he was able to prove that he is indeed the father, and he has the rightful custody by law.
I just want to make sure we're clear. To your knowledge, Fayette County returned custody of Regina to Mr. Patterson?
Yes, sir. Fayette County did return custody to Mr. Dwayne Patterson.
And just a few more questions about the day of the reported incident, the Riverdale report.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just the discussion as far as what was told to you, was that all relayed to you by Ms. Wilson herself?
Of what exactly?
Well, let me ask you, who all did you speak with on the day of the incident regarding the allegations?
Just Miss Wilson.
And so there's, as far as what she's saying that Riviera Beach or whatever other agency said, you're relying on what she's telling you for the basis of that?
My sergeant at the time, Sergeant Kinsey, contacted the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, and he told me that they told him that they were aware of the family, they were aware of the situation, and that it is true that the father was criminally trespassed from that location. Now, whether it was the Fayetteville Police Department or the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, I'm not 100% sure.
And just so I'm clear, at no point does Ms. Wilson claim that she has any sort of court order awarding her custody?
No, she never claimed to have court orders. She just stated that she was given verbal authority.
And even when she talks about what the police department said, she's not saying that the police department is claiming that there's any sort of court order issue.
No, she's basically stating that the Riviera Beach Police Department told Fayette County or Fayetteville PD to not allow, it would not be safe for the daughter to return with the father because of his living circumstances, which were deemed unsafe by the department.
And just so we're clear, so what's being relayed is just determinations made by a police department, not a court, correct?
Exactly.
And at the time, and even right now, are you aware of any document, any sort of order awarding any custody to Judith Wilson?
No.
No further questions from me at this time.
Mr. Schoolcraft?
Yes, Deputy, can you tell me, and I realize at the time you were an officer, but you're deputy now, so. Deputy, you had stated earlier that she did not provide you with any documentation at all showing she had custody of that child.
Correct.
Legal custody.
Legal custody, correct.
She had physical custody.
Physical.
And she lied to you about when the father gave her custody. It was after the mother died in 2018.
Whether that was
I'm going to object. That assumes facts not in evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to deny that objection. I'm going to listen to it, but I hear where you're going, Ms. Pitts. Go ahead, Ms. Schoolcraft.
She did tell you that the father gave her custody when the mother died in 2018, did she not?
Yes, whether that was a lie or a fact cannot be proven.
Well, you read the police report in Fayette County. That was obviously a lie, wasn't it?
This was after the fact, way after the fact of the incident.
it doesn't make any difference. I'm just trying to establish the
Your
fact.
Honor, I'm gonna
Lied
object.
to
It's
you.
argumentative. Does he have a question or are you just gonna tell him he's wrong?
There's Mr. Before I rule on that, Mr. Schoolcraft, I have questions in my mind. For example, as a father, if my child is anywhere, I'm going to be looking for my child. I'm going to be calling the police. I'm going to be doing things. And so if your client or your client's father was sitting on his rights, that's something that I'm going to take into account. So I'm going to deny your objection, Ms. Pitts. I'm going to allow you to ask your question, Ms. Schoolcraft, but I do have questions of my own. So go
Well,
ahead.
the witness, the father, the actual father of the child, he will allay those concerns, Judge. I won't tell you how because I want him to testify.
Well, I mean, we'll get to that point.
I will. Okay, so you arrested two people, charged them with kidnapping on the say-so of this one person who had no legal documentation of any kind to show she had custody of the child.
Not on the say-so. It's on the very fact that they did not have legal authority or legal custody of the child to be snatching her from a guardian who they accepted to be the guardian at the time when they lived with her.
First of all, you never heard from the father. You just talked to the grandmother.
Mr. Schoolcraft,
Judge, I'm just trying to establish facts. You just said something now we never testified to before.
he arrived at a scene, and arriving at a scene is always a dynamic situation. And your questions are loaded, and I'm just saying, just get to where you want to go, and we'll get to your witness. But if we're just going to sit here and you're going to be throwing accusations, that's not a good use of our time.
Judge, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just trying to establish the facts based on your concerns. For instance, you stated to all of us that you were concerned about how long the child was with the grandmother.
Yep.
She said 2018. The mother didn't die till 2021. I'm not trying to argue my case, but I'm explaining to you why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking.
Okay. We'll and I'm going to set the August 2021 date as a fact. And still there are issues to be discussed around that. But I just want you to get to the heart of your case, and let's move this forward.
Did you speak with did you speak with the suspects about why they took the child?
No, they were making
Okay.
spontaneous
Mr.
utterance. They were making spontaneous utterances that that's not her child, and that they were taking her home to the father. That's not her child, etc.
Okay. Let me ask a question about you said something about reckless conduct.
Yes.
How many cars were there when you saw them crossing the street?
It was during heavy traffic.
So they were weaving in and out of cars that were moving?
It was heavy traffic. There was a lot of traffic on the road. And it's a very busy intersection.
Judge, would you ask him to answer? The question I asked was, were they weaving in and out of cars across the street?
The testimony, as I heard it, was that it was a congested time period and they were running across the street. And that's why he believed the basis for the reckless conduct charge. Whether they're weaving in and out of traffic, the answer can be yes, the answer can be no. So just answer Deputy Molina, yes or no, whether you observed them weaving in and out of traffic?
I did not observe them. I did observe Patterson weaving in and out of traffic with the suitcase, and he and Mr. Littles both were running. Sorry, I got a little window pop up here. We're running across the street from incident location, and I'm sorry, I observed Mr. Littles with the suitcase. I keep getting them confused, but Mr. Patterson did run across the same street, the same intersection in the same direction during heavy traffic, which was very dangerous at the time.
Was there a traffic light? They crossed
sir.
in a crosswalk? They crossed in a crosswalk.
I do not know whether they crossed at the crosswalk or not. I observed Mr. Littles not crossing at the crosswalk, literally running in the middle of the street.
But you didn't observe that of Mr. Patterson.
I did not see Mr. Patterson because by that time he was already across the street with the juvenile.
Okay, so you don't know whether he crossed with the light across or using a crosswalk.
I do not know either whether he was in the
Okay.
middle of the street or the crosswalk, but either way, it is a dangerous intersection in which he ran across the street with a juvenile per Judy Wilson's statements.
Okay, so you're basing your reckless conduct on Mr. Patterson by what the grandmother told you. Because you said you never saw Mr. Patterson cross the street.
No, I did not see Mr. Patterson cross the street. I saw
fine.
Mr. Littles cross the street.
Okay. Now you mentioned something about authority. I just want to ask you a question about that.
Say that again. I mentioned something about what?
You mentioned something about that Mr. Patterson and Mr. Littles had no legal authority to snatch the child or take the child out of the car. You made that statement, right?
That they did not have legal authority?
That they did not have legal authority.
Right.
Okay. Now, if the father is a legal guardian and the father said, please go pick up my child, isn't that legal in your mind?
That cannot be.
Gardner, I'm going to object. I believe that invades your purview in this hearing, and I don't believe that Mr. Schoolcraft has established and for the witness to make that assumption.
Judge, he made the assumption that night. He said so himself.
We're going to hear from Mr. Schoolcraft's witness, but Mr. Schoolcraft, you have based one of the legs of your arguments on that the grandmother didn't have any written authority. Does that mean you're going to present written authority from Mr. Patterson that he gave these individuals?
Judge, they don't need written authority because the person that has written authority asked them to go pick up the child. But Judge, I can't argue, right? He made the state is saying that I'm asking him to draw some kind of legal conclusion that was yours. Well, he said that that night he drew the legal conclusion that they were acting illegally.
And that's what we're here for.
Okay. Your Honor, I don't have any more questions.
Any follow-up, redirect, Ms. Pitts?
Oh, Judge, I apologize. Can I ask one more question?
Sure, Mr. Schoolcraft.
You had referred to the Fayette County Police Department report that was in August of this year. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. They gave the child to the father, did they not?
They did.
Okay.
They stated because the grandmother was not able to prove written authority of custody of the child. As I stated, she was told verbally by the father she could do it.
Okay. Well, the last question is, did you speak to the folks in Florida?
I did not.
Okay. So
I was acting on good faith.
So they weren't able to tell you that Mr. Patterson filed a criminal complaint against the aunt who actually took the child. So
No, I was acting upon good faith of the word of other law enforcement officers.
That's fine, officer. Deputy, I'm sorry. Thank you.
And Deputy Molina, what day did this incident allegedly occur?
The one with the latest one with the Fayette County Sheriff's Office?
No, the one when you were with Riverdale and you were called out.
May I reference my report, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I was called out on July 30th, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. May Deputy Molina be excused, Ms. Pitts?
Your Honor, those dates are what I wanted to just clarify.
Okay,
So Officer Molina, I'm sorry, Deputy Molina, your response date to the Riverdale Police Department for which resulted in the arrest of Mr. Little and Mr. Devontae Patterson, that happened on July 30th of 2022, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then when you made reference to the Fayette County Sheriff's Office conduct, that happened after that arrest of Mr. Littles and Mr. Patterson, is that correct?
Yes, on August 16th of 2022.
Okay, and based on your investigation, on July 30th of 2022, who had physical custody of the minor Reginae?
Judy Wilson.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Judge.
thank you. Mr. Schoolcraft, I'm going to bring your witness in, but I'm going to give you fair warning. My understanding of the law as it relates to juveniles is that the state of Georgia would have gained jurisdiction over this case in January of this year, because it's 6 months. And so if that child has been living with the grandmother for 6 months, that grandmother was the legal guardian of that child. And there would have had to been a court action to institute this thing of removing the child or whatever, not I'm just going to go get the child and bring it back because it's my child. Because at that point, 6 months later, those actions are going to have to be filed in Georgia. So I'm just giving you fair warning. We're going to bring your witness in and you can address it. But unless I'm wrong, my understanding of the law is that at 6 months with that child being here in Georgia, jurisdiction no longer was in Florida, it was in Georgia. And whether you're the biological parent or not, you now have to go through the proper channels to deal with that child.
Judge, I don't want to argue about it, but the fact of the matter is, what you're telling me is that if I walk down the street, or let's say I'm in Florida, and I pick up a child that isn't mine, I don't have legal custody to that child. I pick her up, bring her to Georgia. And if I stay here for 6 months, the legal guardians have to come to Georgia, to the courts, to prove that they're the legal guardians. I'm just
Those are
trying to
not
sort out.
those are not the facts before me, because
Right.
if you're going to go down that road, if the father says that the grandmother took the child and the father has not done anything, call the police, do anything else to try to get that child back after
Judge,
6 months,
he's gonna testify. He filed a police report.
and I'm going to listen. But again, I don't hide the ball. And I'm telling you what I'm viewing as being important to me so that you can address it. So I haven't made a decision, but I'm just telling you, I have to follow what my understanding of the law is, whether I agree with it or not.
Your
Okay,
Honor, may I
still,
release?
Yes,
I apologize. May I release Deputy Molina?
yes, Deputy Molina, you may be released, sir, and you can stay on at your leisure, but you're not compelled to be here anymore.
Okay, I'll stay on. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So let's bring in Mr. Patterson. Mr. Patterson, I need you to turn on your camera, sir. Okay,
I'm here.
Mr. Patterson,
Yes, sir.
you are here as a witness for Mr. Schoolcraft. Mr. Schoolcraft, swear in your witness and present your case.
Yes, sir.
Would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
State your full name for the record.
Dwayne Patterson.
Can you tell me who Crystal Wilson is?
That's my wife.
Okay, and is she still alive?
No, sir. She passed.
When did she die?
August 13, 2021.
Okay. And at that time, were you still married?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what date you got married?
I want to say February the 14th. I don't have the marriage license with me. I think I gave it to you, but it's February.
I do have a copy of it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
The judge has a copy of it as well, and so does the state. Okay.
Okay.
Were you married at the time of the birth of the child?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what happened when the mother died? What happened to
When
the
the,
child?
when the mom died, the aunt had took my daughter the next day. I was in the bathroom. The aunt took my daughter the next day. I was on the phone with the grandmom and the mom and the aunt. And I told the aunt that my daughter wasn't going nowhere. My youngest son, he's 9, he left. But my 2 sons, they was there with me. And I told the grandmom asked me, could my 2 oldest sons go up to Georgia because we didn't know who they were shooting at. I said it's okay. And what happened was the grandmom had took my daughter and they went to Miami and straight got on the bus. And my oldest 2 sons took them up there. And the police, I had got a police report because, the coroner didn't have released the body yet for my wife. So I was like, I'm not going to fight with y'all about this because I'm just going to call the police. And I had got a police report about the situation. When I got report.
Excuse me, how many days after your wife died and how many days after the child was taken did you go to the police?
The next day.
Okay.
August the 14th.
Okay.
2021.
Did you ever give permission for the grandmother to keep the child?
Yes, the aunt, she took the child and put her on the bus.
Okay. Tell me this. Did you instruct, or first of all, did you ever relinquish custody of the child, legal custody of the child?
No, sir. And I never been served nothing like that. I always kept my rights. I never gave the grandma. Matter of fact, the grandma blocked me, and I wasn't even talk to my daughter. I didn't even know where the grandmama stayed at. I even came up there and tried to get my daughter. She didn't want me on the property.
And that was when was that? Did you try to get the child?
In January, I have a case with the police station up there that I came up there and tried to get my daughter.
Okay, let's make sure I have the time frames correctly.
One more time, sir.
Let's make sure I have the time frames correctly. Your wife died in August of 2021.
Yes, sir.
The next day or a couple days afterwards.
The next day.
The aunt took the child, put her on a bus with your 2 oldest children, and they went to Georgia.
Yes.
Okay. Did you know where the grandmother lived at that particular point in time?
No, I did not.
Okay. Then you went to the police right afterwards.
Yes, I went to the police. Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you found out where the grandmother was staying, you went to Fayetteville or Fayette County and tried to get the child.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was when she took out the criminal trespass order.
She took out after I left.
Okay. Now, then in August, you were going to try to get the child back again, right? Well, you had already, let me ask a question.
One more
Okay, so
time.
you were going to try to get the child back in August.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and to that end, did you send Mr. Littles and your son, Devontae, to do that?
No, sir. They want to stay with the grandma. They
How
want
long
to
were
stay
they-
with the grandma.
How long were they there?
They was up there for probably like I want to say probably 2 months or so
Okay.
during
Did
the
you ask
summer.
them to bring the child back to you?
No, they said they was going to bring the child back.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Pitts?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Devontae Patterson. So if I understood what you said correctly, when you said your two older sons, is that Jamie and Devontae?
Yes.
Okay, so at the time that your wife was killed, the families decided to move Jamie and Devontae with the grandma to Fayetteville. Is that correct?
No, they didn't decide to move them up there. No, they were still staying with me. My kids were still staying with me.
Okay, so then I misunderstood what you said when they didn't know who was being shot at and my two boys went there.
That's what me and the grandma was talking. She was asked, could the two grandkids come up there, and because we didn't know who was getting shot at, right? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. She said she was gonna bring them back during the funeral. I was on the phone with them. Well, the auntie was on the phone with them FaceTime, and the auntie ended up grabbing my daughter. I was in the bathroom, and when I came, my mom and my aunt and my sister was on the porch. And when I was in the bathroom, my mom called me and say, I think this girl trying to take this baby. So I came out the door and tried to get my daughter from her. And she had my daughter in her left hand. She leaned, her husband was driving. She leaned all the way in the left side, like my daughter basically in his lap. And my mama and my sister was coming. I was like, you know what? We're not going to resort to violence and nothing like that. I'm just going to call the police and put out a kidnap report on you guys, because the coroner didn't release the body. And I say, furthermore, y'all gonna have to call me anyway, because me and my wife were married, for we to make funeral arrangements. Me and the mom had made funeral arrangement, and she said that she was gonna bring my daughter back during the funeral, but she didn't bring my daughter back during the funeral. My kids, the one took her up there. They put her on the bus. The police asked me, said, when we find them, did you want to press charges and stuff like that? I say, I really don't want to press charge. I just want to get my daughter back.
Okay.
And my kids, the one took her up there.
Okay, so after all of that is said and done, Mr. Jamie Little and Mr. Devontae Patterson escorted your daughter to Fayetteville, Georgia in August of 2021.
Did they do what?
Did they, hold on, Ms. Pitts.
Okay,
Did they take your daughter to Fayetteville, Georgia with your permission? Yes or no?
No.
Did your sons go up to Fayetteville, Georgia? Yes or no?
Yes, they went up there. Yes, sir.
How long were they there?
They were there for that week, and they came back come back like what, 4 or 5 days, because the funeral, we was planning the funeral. They came back for the funeral. The grandma was supposed to bring my daughter back, but she didn't. They didn't even say that to me at the funeral.
Well, they returned without your daughter.
Because
Yes
they
or no?
told, yes, sir, because they told my kids that my daughter's gonna come with the other aunt, which she did not come with the other aunt.
Okay, all
but
right.
we can all agree that was in August of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so from August of 2021 until you went to Fayetteville in January of 2022, your daughter was living in Fayetteville, Georgia.
Yes.
Okay, what documentations did you file with the court during that period of time?
I filed down here for emergency pickup twice. I was denied. I filed in January because I didn't know what happened was a family member went up there, and that's how I got the address. I didn't even know where the grandmom stayed at. And when I found the address, that's when I found the emergency pickup for to know where to pick her up from. That's
Okay,
how that happened.
okay. So during that period of time you filed, you were denied.
Yes, ma'am.
Your
I filed
older,
twice.
your older two boys actually lived there for a week with the grandmother, with your permission, correct?
They went up there for the summer, yes.
Right. But you didn't know the address.
No,
Okay.
until January.
Oh, okay. So the period of time that they were there, you had no idea what the address of where your two children were. Well, three
No,
children
ma'am.
at that point.
I didn't know where the grandmom stayed at. No, ma'am.
Okay. And then in January, you came and attempted to take your daughter back at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I came here with the police. And I
So
have a
that would have
case
been
in
5 months, and the police criminally trespassed you from the grandmother's residence. Is that correct?
I didn't know nothing about that. I didn't know nothing about that until when I just went up there last week. I didn't know nothing about that. I didn't even go on the property. The police had me
Okay.
to stay off the property. He went and talked to her.
All right, fair enough. When you came in January, did you leave without your daughter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and police were involved at that point, correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And then again in July, your two sons attempted to grab your daughter forcibly. Was that on your order? Were they doing that because you told them to?
No, they was coming. They was coming home. I didn't inform them to come home, but they know what was going on. That the grandmom had denied, like blocked me. I couldn't talk to my daughter, and she was trying to get custody of my daughter.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Patterson. You said that after your wife was killed, they stayed up there for a week and then they came back. That would have still been August of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Bringing your attention to July of 2022, you said they were coming back home.
The reason why they was coming back home because the grandmom was evicting Devontae without him knowing, and we have paperwork of that as well.
Okay, so we're gonna leave the whole landlord part out of this. At
Okay.
what point between August of 2021 and July of 2022 did your other two children return to Fayetteville, Georgia?
I think they left. I want to say in May. But they was up there like 3 months.
May of 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they left you in Florida in May of 2022 to go live with a woman that you said had kidnapped your minor child.
Yes, ma'am.
Stayed with her for 3 months. And then at the point she was putting Devontae out, Devontae and Jamie, based on your testimony, made a decision to take your daughter with them. That's your testimony.
They was coming back home with her.
Okay, but not because you asked them to do it. Or did you?
I asked them to do it.
Okay. So now you're saying that you asked Jamie and Devontae to take Reginae.
Ma'am, you're confused. They was coming home and they was gonna come home with my daughter. I really didn't ask them to do it, but they already knew what was going on, that the grandma was trying to take my daughter from me. That was what was going on.
Hold on, Ms. Pitts. Mr. Patterson, this is a simple question. Yes or no?
I lost you for a minute, sir.
Mr. Patterson, this is a simple question that you're being asked. Yes or no, did you tell them to bring your daughter home?
Hello?
Can you hear me, sir?
It's going in and out, sir.
Mr.
I'm
Patterson?
losing you, sir. I don't know what's going on. I can't hear you. It's going in and out.
Okay, well, I know what I heard, so go ahead.
I don't
Ms.
hear
Pitts.
nothing.
Go ahead, Ms. Pitts.
Your Honor, I believe.
I'm
my
not getting no reception, sir. I don't hear nothing.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you, Ms. Pitts. Mr. Rogers, do
I
you
don't
have?
I don't hear you guys.
Mr. Rogers,
really
do you
don't know
have
why.
any questions for Mr. Patterson?
I probably
I'm not
will, but
hearing nothing.
yeah, it
My
doesn't.
phone, I don't hear nothing you guys saying.
It's amazing how
I don't
that
hear nothing you guys
happens.
saying. I don't know what's going on.
I think I know what's going on, Mr. Patterson, but
I don't hear nothing you're saying.
you've heard everything up until now, and now
Losing you. I don't hear nothing. I really
you
don't hear
can't hear
nothing.
anything. Okay, that's fine. Mr. Schoolcraft, do you have any redirect of your witness?
I just want to clarify one point. Mr. Patterson, which two sons? What was the name of the two sons?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm not getting no voice. I'm not getting no voice. I'm sorry. I'm not getting no voice.
Okay. Well, Judge, I don't have any more questions. If he can't hear me.
Okay,
Something going on with the connection.
may
Yeah.
Mr. Patterson be
Judge-
excused? Yes,
Judge-
yes, Ms. Rogers.
Correct. I did have some questions for him, but I mean, obviously, if he can't answer them. But I did have some questions for him, so I just want to be clear.
Okay,
Hello?
we're gonna allow him to try to get his
I'm not getting no connection. I'm not getting no connection.
his connection straight, but Mr. Rogers, he's heard everything up
I don't hear
until
nothing
now.
you guys saying.
He's heard everything up until now, and now he can't hear anything.
And yeah, and
I get no connection.
I understand what you're getting at. But I will say that does, Zoom is notorious for having issues. He seems to be out, so it doesn't look like he's on a Wi-Fi connection. So if
Now I hear y'all. Now I hear you. I'm sorry. Now I hear you guys.
okay, Miss Rogers has some questions for you, Mr. Patterson.
Okay, go ahead.
all right, Mr. Patterson. Just a couple of questions. At any point did you and Judy Wilson have a conversation at all about you giving custody
No,
of
sir.
Reggie?
No, sir.
And let's see. And I think part of it where there was some confusion about whether or not you had asked Mr. Littles and Mr. Patterson to bring Reginae with him. Is that so? I just want to give you a chance to answer that clearly. Did you ask them to bring Reginae home to you?
They told me they was gonna bring her when they come. They said they were gonna bring her when they come. They asked me to buy a bus ticket for all three of them. Devontae sent me the screenshot of how much the bus ticket was for him, Jamie Littles, and Reginae.
And let me ask. So once they send you that and ask about that, did you get them the bus tickets?
I bought the bus ticket. I sent him a picture of my credit card, and he used my credit card to buy the ticket.
And just a couple of other questions. I know there's been some discussion. You were married to Reginae's mother when she was born. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at any point, has there ever been any kind of court proceeding regarding your custody of Reginae?
No, sir.
And as far as Mr. Littles and Mr. Patterson go, they had your permission to have physical custody of Reginae. Is that correct?
Yes.
No further questions at this time.
Ms. Pitts, is there any follow-up based upon Mr. Rogers' questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Schoolcraft, may Mr. Patterson be excused?
Judge, I just want to clarify one point. I tried to do it when he couldn't hear us. Mr. Patterson, what was the name of the two sons that went in January? I'm sorry, in August to the grandmother's house? What was their names?
One, Devontae Patterson and Jamie Little Jr.
Okay. And they came back for the mother's funeral.
Yes.
And the child, the
Well,
grandmother.
August. Well, it was in August. The funeral was in August.
They were, who were the two sons? You said your two oldest sons, because you didn't know who they were shooting at. Who were they that went with the grandmother?
Devontae Patterson and Jamie Little. That's the only thing me and the grandmom talked about. Could they come up there for the week? And because we didn't know who they were shooting at, and she asked, and she told me that they were going to come back during the funeral, and that she also was going to bring my daughter down here to the funeral, but she didn't.
Okay, but your two sons came back for the funeral, or
Yes.
Mr. Littles and Mr. Patterson came back for the funeral.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Judge.
And Your
Okay.
Honor, based on that, I do have one follow-up question.
Yes, ma'am.
So they went up right after the shooting, they came back for the funeral, and then based on you, they went, the person who took your daughter, they went back to go live with her in May of 2022.
They went and lived with the aunt. I don't know what month they went and lived with the aunt. I don't know if it was no. That's when they went to Georgia. They went and lived with the aunt. I think they lived with the aunt, and I think a little bit after that. But it was only for like a week or 2 or 3 at the most. They didn't stay there that long.
You said that they were, when they took Reginae, that in July 30th of 2022, they were coming home because the grandmother, you said, was evicting Devontae.
Well, no,
So we can agree that they went to go live with the grandmother.
No, they was coming
No?
home anyway. And then when he say he went to the truck, she sent him to the truck to get some, and she had an eviction paper on him. They was gonna come home before he found out about the paper.
Okay, but we can agree they lived with her. Because she
They
couldn't
lived
evict
they-
them
they
from
was going up
somebody
there for the
else's
summer.
house.
They was going up there just for the summer. They wasn't going to move up there with her.
Okay.
Mr. Patterson, your testimony clearly establishes that they were there and they were living there. Because
Say what?
as Ms. Pitts said, there would be no reason to evict them if they were not living there. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Say that one more time.
If they were not living there, the grandmother would have no reason to evict them.
She wanted to put him out because what happened was Jamie and one of the cousins got into it. And I guess Devontae, was acting out. I know he was cussing in her house. That's why she wanted to put him out, but he was going to come home for the summer. They was never moving up there.
And that honestly is a distinction without a difference to me. The point is that they were living there.
Yeah, they was living there, but they were just going there for the summer. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Ms. Spitz?
They was not on her lease, and then they was on my lease. All of them on my lease except Jamie, but Devontae is on my lease. I have a copy of my lease with his name on there. He just went to stay up there for the summer.
I understand, sir. Anything else, Ms. Pitts?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Rogers?
Just argument, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Schoolcraft?
No, Judge, just argument.
Okay, Mr. Patterson, sir, you are now relieved of your obligation to testify. You can remain here and listen to the arguments and my decision, or you can leave. The choice is up to you. Ms. Pitts, are you going to waive opening? Ms. Pitts?
I was
You're-
on mute. I apologize. Yes,
Yeah.
Your Honor, I am.
Okay, so we're gonna stay in order. We're gonna go with Ms. Rogers first and Ms. Schoolcraft, and then we're gonna swing back around to Ms. Pitts.
Thank you,
Ms.
sir.
Rogers, go.
Yes, sir. I guess I'll start with a couple of things that kind of came up, concerns that the court kind of seemed to be raising. I wanted to start with your discussion about and correct me if I'm misinterpreting or misunderstanding what you were saying regarding about a child having been in the home, been here 6 months, and that jurisdiction will be in Georgia as far as any kind of custody determinations. So am I understanding what you were getting at?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, then what I would like to say to respond to that is just that I will point out that, and I kind of took a look at the statute while we were doing the hearing just to get a better feel for what exactly you were getting at. And from my reading of it, the statute does establish that jurisdiction will be proper in a Georgia court, but it does not say that there's some sort of presumption of custody on whoever is in possession of the child. It doesn't presume to terminate any sort of natural custody that flows by as an operation of law or anything like that. It merely establishes that the jurisdiction that I've seen at least would be proper here, based on the fact that if the child had been here for 6 months. So I don't think that really settles the question of the custody aspect of it. And ultimately what that comes down to is that the state is essentially asking you to usurp the authority of Superior Court, I believe it would be, that to make determinations about child custody. At this point, they have offered no evidence to say that there's any lawful custody resting with Ms. Wilson at this point. I would point out that there's been no dispute that Mr. Patterson is the father of the child. He's also testified to being married, that the child, so essentially the child would be the issue of marriage. And just to kind of be a little bit more specific about it, because in doing my research, the state defines lawful custody in 16-545. They're talking about it in the context of interference with custody, but it does establish that lawful custody means, and I'm reading essentially exactly what it says, 16-545, paragraph 3, lawful custody means that custody inherent in the natural parents, which Mr. Patterson would be a natural parent, or that custody awarded by proper authority as provided in Code Section 1511-133. There's been no allegation of any proper authority awarding custody. A police department is not a proper authority. Their opinions are not proper authority. They're not binding orders or anything of the sort. Additionally, the idea of a kidnapping requires that a person do something without lawful authority and taking control of a person. If the only person who has ever had any established lawful authority is Mr. Pat, well, excuse me, not just Mr. Patterson, obviously his late wife had lawful authority, but as of right now, and there's been no termination thereof, I'm unclear how anyone else could have lawful authority, even for all these discussions about whether or not Mr. Patterson told Ms. Wilson she could have physical, let's be clear, physical custody of Reginae, not lawful, not legal custody, lawful, legal custody of Reginae. To the extent that he may have told her she got physical custody, just like he has the authority to give that custody to her, he can terminate it instantaneously, because her authority to have that child rests strictly on his say-so. Additionally, Yana, I would also point out that any kidnapper has physical custody. So to the extent that the court is making allegations that somehow Ms. Wilson having physical custody of the child ends any kind of inquiry because she has physical custody, that's not lawful custody. That's not what it says, because by that argument, by extension, any kidnapper has physical custody, and now it's a dispute to be taken up with the courts about whether or not reclaiming custody of the child from the kidnapper is lawful. That they need to offer authority for that, Your Honor, because Mr. Littles Jr. does not have any burden today. Ms. Pitts and the state are the ones that had the burden of establishing that she had lawful authority and that she had any lawful basis to control. They have offered no basis to say that. Like I said, the most that they've established is that at some point he was okay with it. At some point after that, Mr. Patterson said he was not okay with it. The only person with lawful authority to confer, or to delegate is Mr. Patterson. He's delegated his authorities, raising no objection to them being in custody. He knew what they were planning on bringing the child back. He acquiesced and facilitated that by providing the child a bus pass. So for all those reasons, Your Honor, based on the fact that Ms. Wilson has no lawful custody, Mr. Patterson's lawful custody has never been, Mr. Dwayne Patterson's lawful custody has never been terminated. And he is the one confirming, he's saying that their physical custody was with his permission. So for those reasons, Your Honor, I would ask that the court would dismiss all charges for lack of probable cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. I'm going to push back on some of the things that you're saying. You would agree with me that parentage is different from custody. So I can be the parent of a child, but not have custody of a child.
Yes, sir. I would agree that that can occur. I would say that absent some sort of intervening thing, as I understand it, any child that's the issue of marriage, the parents of that child have lawful custody. And that is the custody inherent in the natural parents that the statute contemplates. So absent something like that, the parents are the only ones with lawful custody, absent some sort of intervening action like death or a court order.
And the thing that I'm looking at, just to be clear, and you can feel free to respond to this, is that the testimony as I heard it basically established that there is a death of the mother. The child was either taken by the aunt and the grandmother, or the child was given to the grandmother or the aunt. There's enough testimony as it relates to the brothers going up to live there and all of that stuff and coming back, that I think a reasonable presumption can be that the child was up there with the father's agreement. And after 6 months, unless I'm wrong, anything the father wanted to do as it relates to that child has to go through family court in Georgia. And it's you can say, well, hey, he's revoking the authority that he had given. And I'm going to say verbally given. And you can say that he was revoking that. But the manner that you revoke it becomes important, because it's like, as a society, we don't want people shooting it out in the street about what they're going to do over this child. We want people to follow the lawful avenues that are available to them. And if they do, I'll put it in, as Ms. Pitt said about the landlord tenant, people all the time, they fall in love and they met this person they know for 2 months and they move them in, and now after a month they can't stand the person and they want to kick them out. Well, you got to follow the lawful legal avenues. You can't just throw all of their stuff out on the front lawn and tell them to get out and don't come back. So that's sort of the lens as I'm viewing this, that they may have had great motives in doing what they did, but the manner and how they did it is what's going to get them in trouble.
Your Honor, I understand, what you're saying, and I guess to respond to that, there's a couple of things I'll say about that. Number one, I would say that I would point out that these are both young men. And to the extent that that's part of what comes with youth is relying on the adults in your life, the older adults in your life, to steer you in a good direction, and to the extent that you're relying on what to you or to your knowledge is lawful authority. If you know that this person is the father, so I do understand what you're saying. However, I would also point out that, as I understand it, Mr. Patterson did make attempts to go through lawful means, and by my math, if I understood what was being said correctly, if we're talking about August and January, by my count, that's not 6 months. And so there was at least there was an attempt before that was valid. The presumption regarding jurisdiction that we were discussing. Additionally, I would say that once he's tried to go about it the right way, the idea that a person is supposed to just essentially sit back and that the state is going to ratify essentially on the version that and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to make a caricature of anything, but essentially what that's saying is that the state is ratifying a kidnapping almost. And what I mean is that if a person kidnaps somebody in California, brings them here to Georgia for 6 months, and nobody can figure out where that person has been kidnapped and exported to raise a challenge beforehand, to know specifically even what county, because knowing Georgia really wouldn't necessarily be enough. You would need to bring the action in the county. So that would essentially ratify a kidnapping. It would say all kidnapping, that would essentially change the statute of limitations on a kidnapping to where it turns it from a criminal to a civil dispute after 6 months. That plainly cannot be the law. And the fact that if I allow somebody to take my kid somewhere and I say, bring them back after the basketball game is over, and you're like, you know what? We decide we'll bring them back after the next season's basketball games are over. That doesn't mean that now I'm just, out of luck and I don't have a kid anymore. And that's what's coming. That wasn't contemplated. The 6 months in the discussions that I've heard was not contemplated or agreed to. So I don't know how relevant it is.
I had one of the first international parental kidnapping cases in federal court when they passed that statute. My view of this is that these young men would be treated differently as it relates to bond, but not as it relates to whether they fit within the four corners of a statute. And it's, people do bad things, wrong things all the time. And people go about things in the wrong way. But when we're dealing with preliminary hearing, it's whether the state can move forward on it. And the state meets the four corners of the statute, they get to move forward. And this is a case where I think there were poor decisions made. And I don't see, the gang stuff and all of that stuff, that doesn't factor into my decision. But when you these are family members that we can't fix the family through court. And the family needs to get on the same page for the benefit of this young child, so that she can grow up in a loving atmosphere with all of her relatives. But that doesn't mean that what I've heard today doesn't fit within the statute. And that's all I'm charged with doing. And I think it does. But I'll hear from you, Mr. Schoolcraft.
Judge, just a few things. First, there was a big deal made about permission. The fact is that the only legal custodian of this child bought a bus ticket so she could come home with her brother. That's permission.
After how long?
That's just it. They'd only been there a week, according to the father. The other thing too, Judge, is
That wasn't my understanding of the testimony, but I'll hear from the state. Go ahead, Mr. Schoolcraft.
so the father gave it. Doesn't make any, and frankly, Judge, I don't think it makes a difference how long. First of all, who's to say that there was no testimony presented by the state that said these boys knew anything about back in August when the mother died. Didn't know. For all they knew, the father had given permission for the child to go with them, to bring the child back for the funeral, which the child did not come back. You said at the beginning that one of the issues you had was how long did it take him to respond to them taking the child? Initially, it took him 1 day. That was the testimony. He filled out a police report. He looked for the grandmother, couldn't find her. 2 sons came back. They weren't with the grandmother that long. At that particular point in time, they may not have even been aware of the situation. But the father, not only did he file a police report immediately, he tried to find her. When he did find her, he tried to get her, and the police in Fayette County said, no, you can't have her. Again, they didn't have the authority to do that. The father then finally proves in August that he should have it, the child. The fact is that these boys didn't kidnap that child. They had the permission of the only legal guardian, the father. He bought the bus ticket. And it didn't make any difference how long they stayed there. It's whether or not the person with lawful legal custody gave them permission to take the child. So they were not acting unlawfully. They said, we're going to bring the child home. And the father said, good, I'll give you a bus ticket. That's permission. The only person bringing the child to Georgia was illegal.
Mr. Schoolcraft, the way that I heard the testimony from your witness, Mr. Patterson, was that he didn't want to deal with that. And his wife had been shot, and there was a lot of stuff going on. The aunt took the child, and he didn't want to deal with it. There was no testimony that he did not know where that child was.
He testified that he didn't know where the child was. Not only that, but he did go and file a police report. What he said was, because of all the issues that were going on with the death of the mother, he didn't want to press criminal charges against them. He just wanted the child back.
Okay.
That was his testimony, Judge.
I mean, and we'll disagree on that, because I think I heard something totally different. But go ahead, sir.
But he tried several times to get the child. He filed a police report. He went there when he found out where the grandmother lived. Also, Judge, interference with custody is interference with lawful custody. That grandmother had no lawful right to that child. There was no legal custody. So she did not have lawful custody. So they didn't interfere with lawful custody. And as far as the reckless conduct goes, the officer admitted he never saw Mr. Patterson cross the street. There was a traffic light there and a crosswalk. He doesn't know how Mr. Patterson got from one side of the road to the other. So the reckless conduct, there's no evidence that he acted recklessly. It may be for Mr. Little's, I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, I think we heard two separate things, but go ahead with your argument.
No, Judge, I'm done.
Ms. Pitts?
Thank you, Your Honor. So to address the charges as it pertains to Mr. Little and Mr. Devontae Patterson, I believe that the evidence before the court is that Mr. Dwayne Patterson never stated that he gave permission and or authority to Mr. Little or Mr. Devontae Patterson to take the child. So if we just start from that premise, I think we can all agree without Mr. Based on the defense argument that Mr. Patterson, Dwayne Patterson had lawful authority to snatch this child from Georgia if we go with that argument, assuming that without deciding, he flat out said he did not give them permission to take the child. So what we know for certain is that Mr. Little nor Mr. Devontae Patterson had any rights whatsoever at all.
I
If
think,
we assume defense's argument, and that's not what the state is alleging that we do. Additionally, okay, I'm sorry.
Hold
go
on,
ahead,
hold on, Ms. Pitts, because I'll tell you what I heard was that he initially answered your question saying, yes, I gave them permission, but then backed off of it to sort of like, hey, they said they're bringing her home. So that's what I heard. But
correct, Your Honor.
yeah, I just want to be clear. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Additionally, Your Honor, as the state said, there's a vehicle to prove legal custody. And based on the testimony before this court, this child, Regine, was moved to Georgia in August of 2021. And there's zero evidence before this court that between August of 2021 and July of 2022, that Mr. Patterson made any efforts to access the courts for determination.
Yeah, that's a permissible burden shifting. We don't have a burden here. The state.
No, you don't. But I think she's commenting on the evidence as it came through. So I hear it as commenting on the testimony.
And Your Honor, defense counsel's argument is that the officers in August from Fayette, based on what they elicited as testimony, returned the child because Ms. Wilson didn't give the officers the paperwork. So according to defense's argument, that was okay. Police officers had the authority at that point. They made a good decision. But those same officers that made the decision in July and in January were wrong. Your Honor, the only people that can make a determination in this case as to the legal guardianship of Regine are the courts. Based on that, these two defendants' conduct on that day, which is what we have to focus on, is that the evidence before the court is that they forcibly removed this child and endangered her in that incident, so much so that Ms. Wilson drove to the police department for the safety of herself and this child. They interfered with the custody at that time, and they did it in a reckless manner, to the point where she was so afraid for herself and this child that she drove to police headquarters, Riverdale Police Department, and called 911. I believe all the evidence before this court to find probable cause that Mr. Little and Mr. Devontae Patterson acted recklessly. They interfered with custody and they did take this child without any authority is enough to bind this over to Superior Court.
I find that there's sufficient evidence to bind this over. Mr. Patterson, the father, sir, I need you to understand that my decision is made based upon the conduct that is being or has been brought out. That's your child. If you give that child over to someone else, you got to take the lawful means to get that child back. You can't just go and do whatever you want to do and say, this is my child. And so that's how I'm deciding this matter. It's something that, in my opinion, it's just, this was handled poorly. And I'm not making any decisions about Mr. Little and Mr. Patterson from a moral standpoint, but this whole matter was handled incorrectly. And so that's That's going to be the rule in the court. I'm going to bind it over to the Superior Court of Clayton County. And I think the next case we have is the Brooks case.
That's
Can I be
correct, Your Honor.
excused, Judge?
Okay, Mr. Schoolcraft, is that your last case?
It is, Judge.
You can be excused, sir. Have a good day.
And Judge,
Mr.
Mr. Patterson can also be excused. He's still
Yes.
on.
Mr. Patterson, you can be excused, sir. Mr. Rogers, I think we have a number of your cases left.
Yes, yes, sir, Judge. And I don't know. I'm going to ask. I'll see what the answer is, but I would ask that the court would. I know you mentioned, taking into account the situation from a bond standpoint. And I spoke to the state about it. I've tried to work out a bond. There's not a bond that Mr. Patterson, the father, Dwayne Patterson, is really in a position to make. He's got at least, as you can see, three young people that he's trying to take care of. So I just wanted to at least ask the court to consider it, possibly. I'm going to ask OR bond, and I'll take it out there.
Judge, given that one of the charges is kidnapping, Your Honor can't set a bond in this case. So
Yeah.
that's something that attorney